Hey everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tube. Welcome back. It's your 17th Matlock episode review. We're here, the penultimate episode of the season. Next week is the season finale. I can't wait. I legitimately can't wait because, after seeing this episode, I am through the roots on what's going to happen next. I am going to say this episode was amazing. The tension, the suspense, what's going to happen, okay, there was a part of me that kind of knew what was going to happen next. I'm not trying to say this episode was a little bit predictable. I kind of knew eventually a certain direction was going to happen. It was more like the journey. It was more like, how are we going to get there? What was it going to take for certain things to happen? Because again, remember, as we wrapped up last week's episode, Olympia found out the truth, that Maddie is not Maddie. She is just faking it for her own reasons to be in the firm. So now it's more of like, how do we mitigate that? How do we take the information that we know and push it to the next level? And honestly, I think they did a great job. I was actually surprised they even tried to fit in a case this week. I honestly thought this was just going to be the Maddie versus Olympia episode. But the fact of the matter, they still were able to fit in a case and still feel like we had a sustainable amount of time between Maddie and Olympia. I give kudos to the writers. I really, really do. Still trying to fit in Sarah and Billy into the plot. I found this to be a really nice episode, really setting up the stakes. And I'm just really curious, how's it all going to end? Next week is the season finale. It's a 2-hour season finale, which I've decided I will be reviewing as one mega episode review. There will be no two-part. I'm not going to break up my thoughts. I'm literally going to go straight through. It's going to be an event. Stay tuned for that for next week, Thursday. I really am excited for that episode. But however, until then, this is going to be great. This is going to be great. But this episode on its own was amazing, getting us geared up for the finale, getting us as much as we need to go into, and leaving it was like, I really wish it was next week, Thursday. I really wish. I need to know what happens there. I really need to know. But with all that being said, let's go for the Butcher recap and talk about this week's episode of Matlock. So we pick up right where we left off last week. Olympia is asking Maddie, who the heck is she? What's going on? All Maddie can muster up is that, yes, I am not the woman you think I am. But I'm also the woman you think I am. And obviously Olympia is in all sorts of rage right now. She's scared. She's angry. She's disappointed. She's sad. All the feelings roll into one. The only thing she wants to know right now is who the heck is Maddie Matlock? Is she even Maddie Matlock? But however, she's done her research. She's known everything she can about Maddie as best she can. So she immediately tells Maddie to scare off the driver, tell him that she's working a late shift tonight, which she does. She acknowledges it, and then the two catch a cab to go back to the office where Olympia is quick to lock her up in a private room on the 25th floor. I don't know why I remember the 25th floor, but essentially he's locking her up in there. And, she dumps all of her belongings, takes everything into her possession, the laptop, the phone. She makes her write down her passcode. Basically everything. She freaking, pats her down. She finds a burner phone just in case. And, again, this, Maddie, you have to be secure. She got to be ready for everything. And all Olympia wants her to do at this moment is just to write down every single lie she has ever told to Olympia since the first day that she got here. That's all she wants. And they'll take it from there. Obviously, Maddie tries to get a word in an edgewise, trying to speak up on her volumes, but Olympia's not having it. She just doesn't trust Maddie right now. Trust me, I wouldn't. Obviously, I'm a viewer of the show, so I know both sides of the story. But for me, in this case, she doesn't know anything. She doesn't know. In the meantime, Billy and Sarah are just about to wrap up for the night. However, Sarah apparently has decided to go into some personal client work, deciding to branch off from Jacobson Moore, trying to get her own clients, trying to do something original. She apparently got a client who's just looking for a simple cease and desist order. But however, this is Sarah trying to branch off into her own branding, her own identity outside of being just Olympia's team member. And Billy's obviously kind of shooting her a little bit. So even Sarah counteracts with her and with what's the word? I forgot the word basically, but essentially just in the matter of Billy's got a hot date, basically speaking. However, sadly, before they can leave for the night, the receptionist comes up to them asking them where the heck Olympia is, as there is a client in the middle of her office right now crying, belligerent, just like all sorts of worriedness, not sure what's going on. Sarah and Billy does go around to look for Olympia until she ironically shows up after she leaves Maddie alone, and that's kind of where we get to fill in the situation. So here we have a pregnant wife. Apparently, she's related to one of the big families that Jason Moore represents, and she wants to get a speedy divorce because she's very scared for her child's life, as her husband's a crazy psychopath, as she puts it herself. Supposedly, the husband wants to get her a C-section tomorrow, which will essentially remove the baby from her, and that the baby can go into his care, and that she'll be cut out of it, because she did have an affair on him at one point. That's how she got pregnant. The child is not his, and he doesn't know 100% for now, and she's all sorts of worriedness about this. Like, she really just wants to get away from this, get the divorce proceeding. And Olympia tries to calm her down, explain to her that divorce takes a while. Obviously, I mean, I'm not going to say much about that right now, but the point I'm trying to say is that divorce is a very tricky subject, very much back and forth. This isn't something you could just handle in like a few hours. But she just, is expressing the look. The man is controlling. The man has been very much he's not the same man I married. As soon as the rings came on, poof, he turned into a different man. Once I got locked into things, here I am. But she is just vocally saying that, she knows the moment that the C-section happened and her baby's removed from her, she will never see him again. Or see her again. And Olympia's like, okay. The only thing we can do at the moment is just go to night court. We will pitch a case as best we can. Give us as much evidence as possible to prove that he's not the man you married, and we can do what we can from over there. So she lets Billy and Sarah take point in that while she goes back down to the private room while Maddie's being held up. Gaining the notepad that she got. And again, Maddie tries to interject, trying to explain to her, but Olympia's like, nope, I'm going to go read this. You stay here. You think about it, and we'll come back to you. So, so she starts to read the notes that Maddie left for her, and the more she reads it, then she realizes that, oh, wait, you have a husband? Like an official husband? That's when she realizes, oh, crap, if she has a real husband, then that means that husband will be asking where the hell he is, where the hell she is. So she immediately heads right back downstairs, gives her back her phone, and just tells her, look, you gotta figure out, you gotta tell him, like, you good? You're working a case? That's about it. So Maddie calls him up, and obviously he's totally oblivious to what's going on right now. So he just says, obviously the natural thing they've been talking about, like, that Maddie's like relieved that Olympia's not guilty, and that, now Maddie could just go back to being Olympia's friend again, and, still handling the case in the background. Obviously Olympia hears all this. I'm like, well, he don't know you basically kidnapped. So what the heck does he mean? Like, I'm not guilty. And then she starts explaining the base summary of the entire show, where, like, 14 years ago, there was a Reddit post. Then 2 years ago, my grandson discovered it. And then that was the speculation began within the family that there was a possibility that Jason Moore was withholding documents that would have taken opioids off the market earlier. Obviously, Olympia's like, that's not true. We don't have those types of documents. We wouldn't even have them. And she's like, I know, because you don't have them anymore. They were taken away by Julian. And that's when Olympia starts to ask for clarification. That's what she said, like, well, there were 3 people on the Brexit case that the Redditor posted out. That was you, your ex-husband, and his father. His father was in Australia at that time period, and you were at court. And Julian immediately, was the only liar subject. Obviously, from there, we can obviously, Olympia's just kind of baffled by the whole thing, considering the fact, how do you know all this? And how do you know even I was in court that day? And then that's when Maddie admits, like, okay, your laptop was never fully broken. I took it. And that's when Olympia starts falling into place with the coffee incident many, many months ago. Obviously, that's when she points out to her that, like, I had an old recording of my dad on there. And Maddie's like, I will 100% return it to you after this is over. But for the time being, my only priority now is to make sure that the proper evidence goes straight to the local sources so that they can do what they want with the information. But 100%, this law firm will basically be under fire for what Julian did. Obviously, Olympia doesn't believe a word she's saying in the latter half, even though there is some legitimate claim to it. Either way, Olympia leaves because she's got to take care of that court, which they do present the case. They do present that there is, some disturbing facts, which the judge does admit, yes, there are some disturbing facts about this. However, the other side of it is that because, again, it's only happenstance, there was never anything physically done There is nothing on the law side that was conducted that there is not enough legitimate claim to process the divorce right now. There just isn't anything. And obviously she feels for the woman. There is genuine suspense, but sadly there isn't enough legal precedence to warrant a speedy divorce. Which obviously upsets them, and they have to take it back to the drawing board on what else they can possibly explore on an angle. But for the meantime, they're going to let her rest up and just let her get some semblance of sleep before they pick up the case in a couple of hours. Sarah and Billy taking care of her while Olympia is just trying to figure out how else to work the case. Olympia does go back to Matlock, Maddie, to tell her that, hey, look, I don't got time for this. I'm going to call the police, and they're going to handle you. I can't deal with you right now. And Maddie's like, oh, well, if you do that, what are you going to do? What are you going to say to them? Like, and how are you going to explain to them why you want me arrested? And Olympia said, I will explain to them that you were here under false pretenses and that you were purposely impersonating another person. And Maddie's like, look, I did everything legally. I legally changed my name. I legally came up with the story. I took the bar legally. I did everything legitimately possible. You guys hired me. What I decided to do in my free time was none of your concern. And either way, even if you decide to put me in the jail for this, you are also guilty because you, instead of calling the police right away, you purposely got me locked up into a room without my permission, without my consent. So technically, you would also be sentenced to jail too. And Olympia's like, I'm ready to do so, but sadly, again, she just is not in the mood for this, so she cannot proceed forward with that judgment right now. Then I want to say the husband does show up at the law firm herself, acting all crazy, like trying to figure out what's going on. Olympia does show up to kind of mitigate the situation, denying that his wife is there. At least enough to kind of like push him out of the way and say, look, there ain't nothing for you here. You might as well just go home. There's nothing more you could do here. So from then on, I believe then we get over to, where do we go from here? I forgot where we go from here. Where do we go from here? I'm stretching for the hills, but I don't legitimately remember exactly what the next scene is. I know Sarah does have a conversation with the wife, and slash expected mom about her own personal circumstances with her current open relationship, which she's not a fan of. She really isn't. She just wants to be exclusive to her, but she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be shacked down to one woman. She wants the flow to do whatever she wants with anyone else, but she does genuinely care about Sarah, which is something that is personally irking her, and the fact that she's stuck with him there. Sorry to say the least. Eventually, once there is this big rush over this starts to cause a bit of concern of like, okay, there's got to be something in that prenup to allow a level of response to occur. So in order to split the results, they, I believe, where do we go from here? I know they have to split the work up, and at this time period, Olympia is just lying to Billy and Sarah, saying that Maddie's on bed rest. She's just sleeping up because she's, an older individual. So they got to handle it, but she does drop over the prenup over to Maddie to look it over to see if she can figure out what's going on, as the only thing she could check off right now that she does have history in contract law, so this will be exactly perfect, right up her alley to take a look, see what really is going on this front. So I believe they're trying to work this out. They're trying to work out the case right now. They're trying to find any angle possible. I know Sarah and Billy does do their own independent research. No, we don't get to that yet. I don't entirely remember the exact flow of things. I do know we get a couple of sweet moments between Olympia and Julian, as Olympia has no choice but to work overtime in this case. Julian immediately is willing to 100% co-parent, take over, taking care of the kids for the night. He'll just work for the night, whatever leftover work he has to do, and that Olympia could just work on her case. And Olympia is very thankful about it, even trying to call up Julian to say hi, bye, good night to the kids, but it was already too late on that. So, again, nothing seems out of order here. Julian just seems like, once again, a lovable person for the time being. Eventually, Olympia does go back to Maddie. They continue explaining, where Maddie does explain to her that, yeah, the prenup's kind of ironclad. Right now, like, there is a way that, she can get out of it, but however, she's going to lose custody of her daughter, but she will receive a very hefty payout for her, I guess, donation to the family, I guess. However, on the other end, since she did commit adultery, the child is not his. He could still take it away, and she will not get a single penny. So they're kind of screwed in the pooch right now on what angle they could pursue the case on. And this is where, like, I believe Maddie and Olympia continue talking about things where, like, there's just, I don't know how to say it, but like, just essentially, like, Maddie's doing all this just to prove to her, like, you know, even though you may not trust me right now, I still want you to trust me. I still am your friend. I do hope that after all this is over, we can try to, like, you know, that we could try to fix this, you know, try to, like, you know, really give our friendship another go. And that's kind of when Olympia realized, wait, they can get an annulment. And even though, like, even in my brain, like, if I remember from Friends, annulments are kind of have to be, like, within a certain time period between each other. And that's when Olympia points out, well, actually, no, in the state of New York, it's a 4-year period you can get an annulment on your marriage. So you don't have to get divorced. If you can prove under a very extreme circumstance, you could actually just get an annulment and be done with it. However, sadly, most of the options they have available do not apply in this case except for fraud. So Olympia will work on the back end to see if she can prove beyond a legitimate doubt that the guy was lying to her under the pretenses for her to get married. So they go back to the wife, and she does explain to them about the circumstances of their coming. She, you know, he is an older man, she is very younger, and that, you know, she was just very impressed by him, about his money, about his, you know, demeanor, and that she felt like this could be a man I want to marry. During the meantime, she is starting to gain contractions, not, you know, to the point where she needs to go to a hospital right now, but it is starting to ramp up. They do want to try and see if they want to, you know, just stop everything, just focus on delivering the baby, and then they'll focus on in the back end. But she's like, no, if we go right now, they will follow us. They will know what hospital we're going to, and we won't be able to have a fair birth, which they agree to. And the condition is that once her contractions are 4 minutes apart, then they will take her away to the hospital to take care of her. But until then, she's still staying put. So they're trying to find a way to deal with this. Trying to find any angle to do so. I know one angle is probably find another ex-girlfriend that's willing to admit that he was lying about their relationship and pretense, or at least set up the story that he was a liar in the first place, to at least try to, like, you know, actually convince the judge about their case. I know Olympia does kind of shy away a little bit. She goes to do something else briefly. Sarah had enough of, like, you know, just this 2-man operation. She decided, okay, you know what, we need Maddie on this. I'm gonna wake her up. So she calls her phone, and that's when she realizes that Maddie's phone is in Olympia's bag. So once they kind of, like, start to realize, why would Maddie's phone be in Olympia's bag? So they call again to confirm that it is legitimately the same phone. Now they're kind of getting suspense. However, Olympia does show up behind them, and Billy and Sarah kind of quickly trying to change the topic over to the fact that they aren't able to find anything right now pertaining to any, you know, disgruntled ex-girlfriend. However, Olympia just encourages them to keep looking, keep trying to find something, because again, they got a time limit. They don't got much time to waste. So instead of doing that, as soon as Olympia leaves the room and, you know, starts to go back to Maddie, they follow Olympia. She briefly does go up to the 25th floor. Then she quickly gets away. She going back down a different way. And then that's when they decide to go into the 25th floor, trying to figure out, okay, why did Olympia go here? This was such a random floor. There's no real associates working here right now. They do manage to find, well, they look around the hallway, and that's when Maddie actually, you know, communicates them in knocking code to, like, you know, open it up, which they do. So by the time Olympia does show back up to the room, they're already there, and I'm just assuming, oh great, it's all wide open, like, you know, now we're gonna have a really big conversation about this. But no, actually, it's not. That's not the case right now. Actually, the reason why that Maddie just said, yeah, no, Olympia just gave me a private office to work overnight shifts, you know, just happens sometimes, you know, make me feel comfortable, get a little couch, get a little nice and comfort. And Sarah, you know, gets a little upset by it, since, you know, she's, you know, the mentee of Olympia, and then, you know, she doesn't get her own private office, you know, so she's kind of keeping in check. Olympia, again, having no choice but to kind of go along with this. So her interrogation doesn't go well, but now Maddie gets to use this opportunity to get her phone back, to kind of regain control a little bit. The four of them sit down trying to figure out an angle of things. And that's when Maddie pitches the idea of probably involving the priest that married them. Maybe he can, like, let slip something that could potentially be enough to annul them. And, you know, it's a really good angle. And obviously Sarah pitches the idea, well, you know, Maddie's got a thing for like swaying older men and older women, so maybe this would be right up her alley. And obviously, Maddie wants to take this opportunity to escape also from this very temperature controlled room. And Olympia's like, okay, we could discuss the finer details of it. Paging Sarah and Billy to get things ready for them, and that's when Olympia's like, well, that was smart. You planned the whole thing so you can get out of it. And Maddie's like, nope, I didn't plan the whole thing. It was just an opportunity that popped up. I didn't know they were on my floor. But essentially, Maddie just lets her know, like I could have gotten out of this much earlier if I choose to, revealing her bracelet is actually an emergency medical tag that when she presses the button, essentially it will send a signal to EMT to come to her location. So technically speaking, they could have easily, she could have easily been saved hours ago, but she chose to stay here to prove to Olympia that A, she still considers her friend, and B, she wants to stay put and really explain to Olympia exactly what the matter is. And Olympia kind of starts to begin to see a little bit of things. Even that's around the time period where Maddie admits to Olympia's like, don't you find it strange that like at the same time period this happened, which was around the same time you purchased your brownstone, your house, that he mysteriously had enough money to purchase it? Like, isn't that really questionable? And trying to cause doubt into Olympia, which it is starting to go through to her head, but at the same time it very much is like, okay, this is not good. This is not bueno for her. But anyway, she does grant Maddie permission to interrogate the priest, which the priest immediately just says, look, I know what you're trying to do here. I ain't gonna say crap. I know this family. There's absolutely a no way that, this man that I baptized this since he was a baby is even capable of doing these, actions you're claiming he's doing. And, obviously Maddie's just getting him to lure him in about his religious aspect. However, the wife does also say that, wait a minute, when I was dating him, he said he wasn't religious. He had no religious background. Hence that this was a false pretense for her to get married, which is enough to prove fraud. So they go back to court. And they're able to prove it to the judge, and the judge is like, okay, you know what, considering everything going on, considering the fact you're also got contractions on the way, I will grant your annulment. So go have your baby in peace. So they take her over to the hospital. They drop her off. She manages to have her baby nice and healthy. Everything is well without control from the other family. So they briefly celebrate their victory. Maddie admitting she's tired and that she will return to her private room to make Olympia happy, while Sarah and Billy are packing it up for the night. Sarah decides to end things with her very open girlfriend that it's not for her. This isn't something she wants to go for here. And Billy does admit to Sarah he may not also pursue anything with his love interest, considering the fact that he's just not ready for another serious relationship right now. He was just looking for a fling, which is what they did. But now, sadly, she is starting to act more like a girlfriend, which, sad to say the least for Billy. He's back on the market, basically. I believe that's around the time period where Olympia decides to read the rest of Maddie's notes, which again does confirm to her, like, yes, I did have a daughter. She's still dead, but she died of a drug overdose. She also admits more about her sister, more about the story, about the false pretense into why she's doing this, but still at the end of the day that she still considers Olympia a very good friend. Olympia does find the obituary, thus confirming that Maddie was telling the truth, and this is kind of where she gets her own moral weighing conflict, where like part of her does kind of still see Maddie as a friend, but at the same time she also is seeing all the damage that Maddie caused to her throughout the entire time period of the show, where, even though Maddie's actions were not meant to hurt Olympia, it still created some damage between her, which is causing her to like have this moral dilemma. Is Maddie worth someone to give a chance to still, or should she still pursue forward with calling the cops and letting it be? Julian does show up to kind of, relieve her, letting her kind of like go back home and take like, her time to sleep. Which Olympia's like, yeah, I know. She was also thinking about the brownstone, bringing that up again, and that's when Julian admits that, I just happened to get the money because the trust opened up. My mom gave me approval. And that's when, Olympia starts to kind of really, really think about it. It's like, okay, timelines are very weird. They're adding up to a certain extent, but at the same time, they're not adding up in a good way. So with all that being said, Olympia decides to take Maddie out of the office to take her back home directly, which is where her husband and Alfie look at them as, Maddie is bringing home Olympia home for the first time. And this is when I'm like, oh my God, the interactions are going to be crazy. They really are. And that was it for this week's episode of Matlock. This was a great episode. This really was great. I don't even know where to really to rank it. Just alone, the scenes between Maddie and Olympia, they were so overdue, and it was so great to see it. To see Olympia really begin to tear into Maddie, not to an extreme rude extent, but more of the extent of that. Again, this is a woman she thought she could trust. It didn't really work out, and now it kind of turns back into the phrase of maybe there is some truth here. Maybe she's not a crazed, con artist. But at the end of the day, for Olympia, I do also admit to her that she has been hurt many times by her husband, by her firm, and then again, someone you thought you could trust was right there in front of you, and she actually was there under false pretenses. So I'm not surprised that was her reaction at the end of the day, and I wouldn't be surprised if she says she would do it again. But the only thing and also to get to see Billy and Sarah still have a little bit of progression with their storylines. I feel like that's the natural conclusion to their season 1 storylines. I don't think we'll get anything more out of them in terms of their development until next season. But overall, this was a very overdue episode. It was great to see it. I love the suspense. I love the thrill of it. And I really cannot wait to see how they deliver on next week's 2-hour finale. But with that all being said, I'm going to give this episode 2 thumbs up. Let me know down below what you think of this week's episode of Matlock. Did you love it or did you love it? Let me know down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But I believe that's going to do it for me today, everyone. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Tube from ActionX. We're reviewing every episode in the first season of Matlock. If you want to know what we're doing normal What's the Tube beside our Matlock episode reviews. Right now, we are doing Reacher reviews each and every week after brand notices on Amazon Prime. We are also doing Suits LA episode reviews each and every Sundays after brand notices on NBC, and we are also doing Rookie episode reviews each and every Tuesdays after brand notices on ABC. But if you don't care about Matlock, you're in luck. We'll be back next week with a big old season finale review. Stay tuned until then. It's going to be a big one. And just to kind of announce our usual end of review season rigmarole, next week will be our season finale review, which will be live as soon as the episode is over. The following week, we will be doing a Season 2 predictions video where I will be talking about what I want to see in the next season of Matlock, what storylines do I want them to tackle, where do I want to see these characters go, all the charades, and I can't wait to see how they were going to continue to evolve the story even further. And then the following week, you will get a spoiler-free Season 1 review of Matlock for anyone who has yet to catch the show, which would be crazy to say the least, that if there's people who heard about the show and hasn't watched it yet, you're crazy. Unless you're trying to binge it, so that's a different story. But again, I'll see you guys next week. But until then, thank you so much for watching again. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, like, favorite, share if you want to. Ring that bell and follow us on social media for more. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.